service,
love,
abundance,
significance,
hope,
gratitude,
freedom,
wisdom,
faith,
security,
peace,
discipline,
kindness,
truth.
Well, good Monday morning, beautiful person. You are listening to Things I Learned on Sunday, a recalling of insights harvested through conversation, observation, and the example of others. Now, the purpose of this podcast is that you would share in the powerful impact of these insights along with me while you begin your day, and hopefully nourish your soul to start your week off right. Welcome. So this last weekend, I got to do something that was really special. I got to spend time with two of my C4C guys and one of their friends and spend a whole Saturday driving the 2-hour drive to Ponca, Arkansas, singing some different kinds of music at the top of our lungs really badly, and then spending the day hiking.
We're basically going to do the whole route, and then we are going to end at Eden Falls, which is going to be dry mostly, and then Eden Falls Cave, which you have to shimmy through about 1.5 feet or so to 2 feet of cave to get to, and then it opens up into the Cathedral Cave.
Talking, caving, sweating, getting hurt, and hanging out, and just having an all-in-all, not only quantity time, but quality time, because I think quality time lies within quantity time with these guys. One thing that I really enjoyed was it's rare that I spend time just with the guys. Like normally when we do something, we're doing it in an entire group. And that specifically, even though we didn't necessarily talk about any specific or direct topics that were just for guys, it was just guys hanging out. And when you're dealing with people of the same sex, whether it's men spending time with men or women spending time with women, there is just a different air. You act a different way. At least that's the way it is with men. Ladies, you can tell me if that's the same with you.
I know, dude, that's what I'm saying. I'm not prone to
If you guys get this and we didn't make it, tell our families that we love them.
So we just got to be men hanging out on this trip together, and it was an absolute blast. Ponca, Arkansas, Lost Valley is really known for Eden Falls Cave. So there's this place at the very end of this trail that you literally have to shimmy, and you can't be squeamish. You certainly can't be claustrophobic, but you have to shimmy at one point through, I don't know, maybe 1.5 feet of height in a cave, and you have to squeeze your way through this small area. And if you get through to the other side, you come out in this cathedral type of cave that has no opening on the other side. It's pitch black, but water seeps into this cave. And so you squeeze through into the Cathedral Cave, and you end up right there where there is a waterfall in this Cathedral Cave.
Sam and I are using his light because we're in the back of this cave. I'm going to flip it around.
And so we did a lot of hiking to get to this point. We did a lot of exploring. You can do a lot of climbing, and really the climbing, you can climb at any skill level there. There's a lot of different things that you can do, and the guys were showing off some of their athleticism while we were there, so it was a really good time. What I really learned about this trip was when the guys came into class, because all of them came into class on Sunday morning to our C4C class, I looked at those guys slightly differently. Even though the two guys that have been with us forever I already know well, but after spending basically all of Saturday with them and having lots of quality time with them, I just knew them a little better. I was a little closer to them. I felt that much more comfortable around them, and I'm sure that's how they felt about me, and that's how they felt about each other. But it's so imperative we spend quantity time with members of the church of the same sex.
This is Sam, expert cave crawler, crushing it, living up to the hype.
Like in Titus 2, we get the idea because of the roles men and women have and women training up the women that it is good for Christian men to spend time with Christian men so that they can learn how to be Christian men.
Okay, so that part that Sam just like shimmied through there at the end, it leads into this cave that we are in right now.
It's awesome.
So yeah, this is the Cathedral Cave. I don't know how well you can see it, but there's a waterfall.
And it's more concentrated than it is if we're all spending time together. In the same way, it's good for Christian women to spend time with other Christian women so that they can learn how to be better Christian women. And it's just more concentrated than it is when we all spend time together. So the first thing I learned on Sunday is really for that it's essential for me to spend time exclusively with my brothers in Christ. And I worded it that way because that's the thing that I learned. And I hope your takeaway from this is to make sure you are spending time, ladies, with other young women in the church, with other women your age, and men that you're doing the same thing, spending time with other men, so that you can edify and encourage each other. And it has that special angle to it because of who you're spending the time with. And this leads me to the second thing that I learned on Sunday. The second thing that I learned on Sunday comes from our focus study in class. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 10. And really this study, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, it really shows you how important it is for the Christian to understand the Old Testament so that they have reference and a deeper understanding of the New Testament. Because whenever we start off 1 Corinthians chapter 10, it talks about the people being led as they passed under the cloud and they all passed through the sea. And it sounds very cryptic unless you understand the Old Testament. Try to read 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 1 through 13. If you don't understand what it's talking about, if you haven't read the Old Testament story, and you're going to have a hard time. So that was really our focus in class. Something that I talked about in class that I don't know if this group of C4C students knew was how the Bible is canonized. And I honestly don't think most people know how the Bible is canoned. Like, they don't know why the Old Testament is put in the order the way that it is, and why the New Testament is put into the order the way it is. So I'm getting ready to give you the 30,000 feet way up there understanding of how the Bible is canonized, how it's ordered, how it's put together. So this is just the very basic 30,000 feet fundamental. But if you get this fundamental, it's going to give you a better idea, a really good idea of how the entire Bible works in concert. So really quickly here, I'm just going to give you the broad categories of how the Bible is ordered. Okay, so the first 5 books in the Bible are simply called the 5 books. That's really enlightening, right? The reason they're called the 5 books is because they don't really fit into any other category, and they're our earliest history, obviously, from the beginning of time on. So you have Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. That's the 5 books. They're in a category sort of all into themselves. Then the next section of books that you have in the Old Testament is Israel's history. So that next entire library, that next entire section of books of the Bible is all about the history of Israel. Then we have the next section that's both poetry and wisdom. So this would include books like Ecclesiastes, Psalms, Proverbs. It's all those books right there that are both poetry and sort of like the spiritual philosophy or wisdom of the Bible. Then we have the books of prophecy, okay? So basically, when you get through those poetry and wisdoms books, now this is just a really fast overview, by the way, but then whenever you get through the poetry and wisdom books, from that point on, all the way through Malachi, all the way through the end of the Old Testament, I don't know if you realize this, but all of the books of prophecy are categorized together at the very end of the Old Testament. So there's your categories of the Old Testament. Then you come into the New Testament and you have the Gospels. The Gospel is a fancy way to say the good news referring to Jesus' life, death, and resurrection. Okay, so you have the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Then you have the book of Acts. So the book of Acts falls into a category completely unto itself because it is the Acts of the Apostles. It's the historical documentation of the Acts of our apostles. So the next chunk is letters. So this is Paul's letters. So this goes all the way from right after the book of Acts, where Romans begins, all the way to the last book, up until the last book of the New Testament. So this is Paul's letters. And then finally, this leads us to the final book. And obviously, the final book of the Bible, of the New Testament, it stands in a class completely of its own. This is the book of Revelation. So very quickly there, within a minute or two, I just explained to you in very broad strokes, 30,000 feet, how the Bible has been canonized, how the Bible has been ordered together. But here's the thing, that if that didn't blow your mind, if you didn't know that already, that is going to blow the back right off of your brain and will be well worth the cost of admission to listen to this podcast. Okay, here it is. 5 Israeli poets of wisdom prophesied that the Gospels and Acts were letters of Revelation. Okay, I'm going to say that one more time, and I'm going to timestamp this point in the podcast and put it in the description below this video. If you're just listening to this video, at some point you'll want to get to a place, if you didn't already know this, where you can write it down. The 5 Israeli poets of wisdom prophesied that the Gospels and Acts were letters of Revelation. If you memorize this, and I may say it enough that you memorize it, then you will literally be able to recite the entire canon of scriptures, because that's exactly how I just gave it to you without looking at any notes. The 5 Israeli poets of wisdom prophesied that the Gospels and Acts were letters of Revelation. So the five books, Israel's history, poets of wisdom, so that's the poetry books and the wisdom books, prophesied, so this is the prophecies, that the Gospels, the 4 Gospels, and Acts, its own book, were letters, Paul's letters of Revelation. The 5 Israeli poets of wisdom prophesied that the Gospels and Acts were letters of Revelation. This will also help you, whether you're in the Old or New Testament, when you're trying to look something up, you can ask yourself, what am I looking up? What category does that fall under? The 5 Israeli poets of wisdom prophesied that the Gospels and Acts were letters of Revelation. If you memorize that, you now know and can recite at any time the entire canon of the Bible from Old Testament to New Testament. And this brings me to the third thing that I learned on Sunday. The third thing that I learned on Sunday comes from Philip's sermon on Sunday called Transforming Our Desires. And again, we read through 1 Corinthians chapter 10, and his focus was, how do we come to desire God more than anything else so that we take action to live for Him? And there was a quote that was made in the lesson. It was put up on the PowerPoint. It was by James Smith in Desiring the Kingdom. The quote was, "Our hearts are shaped and molded by the habit-forming practices in which we participate in daily." Now, this really ended up becoming the thing that I learned on Sunday, the third thing that I learned, simply because I spent several years of my life not managing my time well. I spent several years of my life sleeping in late. I spent several years of my life just like playing video games and watching movies. I spent several years of my life really not getting a whole lot done. And whenever I did try to get something done, I was very hard on myself, so then I would give up fairly quickly. And so I wanted to learn how to manage my time and life better. And so I devoted several years of my life. I even started a YouTube channel on it that lasted for several years, where I would weekly post videos of how to manage your time in your life better. And so I came up with all these different hacks, all these different ideas. And something that has really helped me over the years is developing habits. And so whenever I read this quote, like so much of the things that I learned on Sunday, it was a reminder to me of where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. If you look where you're spending your time every day, then it's not hard to reverse engineer where that time is being spent to find out what you really value and care about the most. So this quote, our hearts are shaped and molded. So in other words, where your treasure is, where your heart is, it is being molded and shaped by that thing, by the habit-forming practices. So not something you do once and twice, but something you do habitually, which we practice in daily. So these are conscious habits that we create that happen every single day. Our hearts are shaped and molded by those things. There is a memory expert. You might have heard of him. His name is Jim Quick. I really love a lot of his stuff. He's got a book called Limitless, and he's known for being a memory coach to Will Smith, Barack Obama, all these different people. And I believe it's his quote where he says, if you have a good morning, then you're probably going to have a pretty good day, or at least a much better day. If you have a better day, then stack 7 of those days together, you're going to have a better week. If you have good weeks, you have a good life. And I love the philosophy of this because it breaks down having a good life into such simple bite-sized chunks. Now, Jim Quick is talking about this from a secular standpoint, but as Christians, we know what the formula is. We don't have to guess what the recipe is in order to have a good morning or have a good day or week or life. And so one thing that I do first thing in the morning is I will pray, and I have specific people that I pray for. I'll pray for Jolie. I'll pray for my parents, her parents. I'll pray for our families. I'll pray for my best of friends, and then I pray for the college ministry. I'll pray for our leadership at Sunset, and this is something I do practically every morning. And then I will read my Bible. And so what this was a reminder for me about, this our hearts are shaped and molded by the habit-forming practices in which we participate in daily, I was reminded of the fact that I need to go forward and read my Bible every single day, because as I do that, over the years, my heart is never going to be stopped being molded and shaped. And then as we talked about in class this last Sunday morning, I need to be reading from both the Old and New Testament. So instead of trying to read through the Old and then through the New, reading them both at the same time, Bible study plans are really easy to find on that. You can find them on Google, so that I can concurrently understand how the two work together in concert with each other, both the Old and New Testament. And as I do that, it's reading the Bible as a whole that's causing me to fall in love with it more and more as time goes on. Or as James Smith would say, it's causing me to have my heart shaped and molded by the habit of falling in love with the Bible every day. So that's really the third thing that I learned on Sunday. And that is it. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. If you haven't already, please subscribe and tickle the little notification bell to be notified of spiritually nourishing content appearing regularly. Consider commenting so you and I, can grow this community outside these 4 digital walls. And most importantly, make a great day today and make a great week by serving and allowing your bright light, because it's bright, shine it, making that bright light shine all week. And as the good book says, they will know we are Christians by our love. Until next time.